This little girl is just a few days old and a heroin addict.
You get a taste.
Her tiny limbs convulse as she withdraws from her mother's multiple drug addictions: heroin, diazepam and prescribed methadone.
These babies, if they are withdrawing, are often very, very irritable. They are difficult to feed, they are quite sweaty, they can have diarrhoea, they fight feeding, they cry, they're very irritable, very difficult to console, very, very demanding babies actually. The babies are going cold turkey.
Dr. Helen McAteer is a paediatrician at the Princess Royal Maternity Hospital in Glasgow. She's seen the number of babies born with the condition neonatal abstinence syndrome, or NAS, increase dramatically over the years.
We deliver about 150 women a year here who are known to misuse drugs. There's no doubt that there is another big cohort of women out there who we just don't know about, women who deliver babies. And because babies are discharged now, very commonly babies are discharged from maternity units within the first 24 to 40 hours, it may be that there are infants out there in the community withdrawing or having a milder form of withdrawal and really nobody knows about it. So we just don't know the extent of the drug misuse problem in pregnancy.
And looking after these babies is a drain on the hospital's already stretched resources.
The babies born to drug misusing women were about 3% of our births, and they used up 18% of our hospital cot days, so very, very expensive, labour-intensive babies.
The costs may be great, but a far bigger concern is that the long-term medical consequences for babies who suffer from NAS are still unknown.
We have just kind of undertaken quite a large study of 100 babies born to methadone-using mums to see how their vision is in the first year of life. Overall, there is some impression that these children do have developmental problems in the long term. It's also quite concerning that their heads are a little bit smaller than you would expect, because if you have a head of a smaller diameter than you would normally expect, then that implies that the brain underneath is also smaller.
In Scotland, up to 60,000 children are affected by the addiction of one or more parent. In many cases, the damage is beyond repair. It's a similar story in the rest of the UK.
Mum, in my tummy.
It's dinner time for 11-year-old Dominic. He has to be fed by his adoptive mother through this tube.
Dominic has organ damage to practically every organ in his body. Eyes, ears, his heart, his skeletal system, his bowels, everything has been damaged.
Dominic's biological mother was an alcoholic.
He was actually diagnosed at birth with fetal alcohol syndrome because the parents were drinking quite heavily. The alcohol has gone into his bloodstream and his organs are trying to develop under the influence of alcohol.
Dominic was literally drunk in the womb.
That's right, drunk in the womb, absolutely.
Oops. There, that should get them sparkling clean.
Dominic has undergone numerous operations to try and repair the damage he suffered in the womb. Now aged 11, he's just been diagnosed with arthritis.
I've made a fantastic job. I have to do running about and I think, oh no, time to sit down, can't be running about so much.
I don't think he's ever going to have a normal life.
When I'm really, really, really tired and I think, oh yeah, wheelchair. Mum, I love you.
There is no cure for fetal alcohol syndrome.
So much.
The Scottish Government has contributed almost £29 million to frontline drug and alcohol services this year. an increase of more than 20% since 2007. But the adverse effect of parental addiction on children continues to make headlines.
Susan Taylor was sentenced at court to 3 years for feeding methadone to a 2-month-old baby boy. Her partner, Lynn Cowan, got 10 months for failing to call for help.
Police in East Lothian have confirmed that a 2-year-old boy died after drinking the heroin substitute methadone. Derek Doran from Elphinstone was found dead in his bed by his mother in December.
A man has been arrested after a 3-year-old girl drank the heroin substitute methadone at a house in Western Bartonshire.
With more and more babies like this one born to parental addiction, some say it's now time for a radical rethink. Across the Atlantic, from a suburb in North Carolina, there's emerged a controversial and some say unethical solution. For the past 13 years, Barbara Harris has been on a personal mission. She pays $300 to addicts to never have children.
I ain't used to shoot up, but I smoke.
This is Project Prevention in action, touring across the states to attract addicts. With funding from private donors, Barbara Harris has already paid more than 3,500 addicts, men and women, to be sterilised.
Give us an address, we'll mail you some forms, and you take them to the doctor or clinic of your choice, decide what type of birth control is best for you, and then you mail them back, and then we'll pay you.
Oh, okay.
Just knowing that it's every mile we drive is for good. I mean, somebody driving by us in a car might have a daughter who's strung out on drugs and could get pregnant, so they'll give them our phone number or call us up.
It's a controversial idea, yet one her family fully supports.
We've been to almost every state in the RV. We'll go for a trip for 3 or 4 days to a state that's closer to us. They're my co-pilots and they're my little sign hangers and leaflet hander-outers, so we're a team. Please.
This is one of Barbara's clients. Tina is from Baltimore. Her addiction started when she was 15.
At first, I didn't think there was anything wrong with it. I didn't think that because I didn't do it every day. I only did it maybe once a month.
But that soon changed. By the time Tina fell pregnant, she had an uncontrollable drug habit.
I'm right through the alley at another house, a crack house. And we're all getting high. And my water breaks. I'm at the kitchen table. Now they've just given everybody some crack. And I had a lot left. So I wasn't going to stop. I get to the hospital. I had half a pillow of heroin, a couple 40 ounces of beer, and a lot of crack.
This is the moment Tina meets her baby daughter. She was stillborn, killed by her mother's addiction.
They lost the heartbeat halfway through. She never made a sound, so I never heard her cry.
Tina still plays this video. It's her only memory of her dead daughter. But every day she has to face up to what her drugs did to another of her children. Joe is 9, but has the mental age of a 5-year-old.
He gets teased every day. Nobody wants to be his friend. He can't do things. He says, I'm stupid. My brain hurts. My brain hurts. That's my fault.
I'm crying. I love you.
Tina vowed this could never happen again and took Barbara's $300 in return for being sterilised.
Being in your program's been a big help,
It really means a lot to me.
I'm clean now, 210 days. My tubes are tied. I'm not having any more children. If you're using drugs and you don't care enough about your own body, care enough about the baby. The baby deserves a really good chance at life. And how's that baby going to have a shot with drugs and alcohol?
By sterilising women like Tina, Barbara Harris believes she's stopping a problem before it starts. Yet some addicts argue she's removing a powerful incentive to get themselves clean.
If I didn't have kids, I probably wouldn't be here doing this interview with you.
Why's that?
I'd be dead.
For Chrissy, it's the third time she's tried to kick heroin. Addicted, but desperate to get her kids out of care.
Just today, I received a letter from all 3 of my children, and they all tell me how much they love me and miss me, and that they're proud of me.
Chrissy is just one of many critics who believe Barbara's methods do more harm than good. Barbara Harris began Project Prevention from her home in a quiet North Carolina street.
Growing up, I always said I was going to have 10 kids. How many pancakes do you want, Isaiah?
1.
She began adopting the yearly offspring of a crack addict mum.
The birth mother of my children obviously dabbled in most of all drugs and alcohol. She had just literally a baby every year for 8 years.
Barbara had to endure seeing the children she had adopted suffering from the pain of withdrawal.
I got very angry about the damage that these drugs do to these children. It broke my heart. I was angry at the mom, and then my anger turned a little bit to where, why do we allow her to do that? You know, I'm thinking as a caring society, and we claim that we care so much about children.
It's an ironic twist. Had that mother accepted a sterilisation check, Barbara's much-loved adopted family wouldn't exist.
Obviously, if starting my program took me back in a time warp and took my kids away, I wouldn't have done it. But people need to realize that my 4 are 4 of the luckier children.
Barbara Harris has now decided to bring her controversial solution, cash in return for being sterilised, to Scotland.
We've seen the stats on the amount of drug-addicted babies that are born here and the amount of addicts they have here, and it seems like it's a place that could definitely benefit from what we do.
She's no stranger to controversy, even here in Glasgow.
Are you nervous about being back in Glasgow again? No, I'm not. I'm not, as long as the truth is told. Right. Because the last time we were here, they definitely filled all of the newspaper readers here with nothing but lies about us. So now hopefully we can come back and set the record straight.
During her last visit to Glasgow, it was widely reported she'd approached a non-addict and offered her sterilisation in return for money.
Deborah Wilson had read about the US scheme which claims to help drug addicts, but she never thought she'd be approached.
I was humiliated because it was actually, there was lots of people around. My son was there. My son's now asking questions, do you know, of some of the things that she was saying.
Deborah says she doesn't do drugs. She was coming out of this medical centre with her 9-year-old son Jay when she was approached by 3 women and 2 men.
Yes, hopefully this time the message will be positive as it should have been last time, because we realize some people may not like what we do, but for the most part, most people get it, which is what drives us, because most people don't think it's okay to abuse children, so that's on our side.
Dr. Mary Hepburn works at the health centre where Deborah says she was approached. She thinks Project Prevention is a highly flawed strategy.
If you are bribing a woman to have an operation by giving her money, then the consent that she gives for that operation is not valid, because it is not going to be fully informed consent, and it is not going to be given freely. It's going to be given with inducement. The only people that the people that presumably she is most aiming at are the ones with a chaotic drug problem, and they're the least likely to turn up for the surgery anyway. And if somebody attends under the influence of drugs or alcohol and asks to be sterilised, then I think it's questionable whether they can give informed consent, and I would imagine that my colleagues would not agree to sterilise them under those circumstances.
Undeterred, Barbara and her colleague Stephanie go back to the streets of Postle Park. Will they find any addicts to sterilise this time round?
I've actually been an addict for 35 years, but I was actually in hospital there for 2 months, and that cleared my head, and I'm actually been off it 7 months now, and there's no way getting back for the progress that I've made.
That's good. But it took you 35 years. Did it take? Have you been in drug treatment many times?
Yeah.
It's hard.
It's very hard.
Very quickly, Barbara begins to attract more attention.
I did use when I was pregnant, I'll admit that. But I get help for that. I went into the hospital on the detox.
Did they take your baby away from you?
No, I got to keep my baby.
That's good.
And it was the best thing that happened to me right enough. But other than that, I just don't agree with people taking drugs and having babies just for right.
Yeah.
And they're getting the wrong money for it as well, because they're using and they're having their babies and they're using their babies' money to go out and get drugs.
As Barbara Harris attempts to recruit across the UK, she finds her first British client south of the border. Long-term drug addict John, who wants to remain anonymous, contacted Barbara through her free 0800 number.
I'm 38 now. I have been involved with, and I suppose on some level psychologically dependent on drugs since probably about the age of 11 or 12. I've burgled houses, I've burgled commercial premises. I've been a thief, basically, is the simplest way of putting it. I've dabbled in dealing drugs here and there, but to be honest, I've never been any good at that because I end up getting high on my own supply. I wouldn't be able to support a kid. You know, I can just about manage to support myself. I've just about got it together to do that.
According to Project Prevention's guidelines, John has 30 days to think about his decision.
Okay, so we're going to discuss sterilisation and long-term contraception and the pros and cons of each.
There's no doubt Barbara Harris's project makes big headlines. We've been allowed to film in this residential rehab unit to give us a glimpse of what recovering addicts think of her methods.
It's barbaric.
Yep.
It shouldn't be allowed, really.
You get into such a state that getting offered money to be sterilised, you would take the money without even considering the consequences. You know, and in recovery, 1 year, 2 years down the line, you might want a family, so if that option's been taken away from you, it's another burden and another regret that you're going to have to carry through life. It's not easy being an addict, but it's certainly not easy in recovery either, without having the chance of children being taken away from you because of a stupid mistake you made, because you're vulnerable and being offered money when you really need it.
Okay.
The chances of addicts recovering is pot luck, according to Barbara, and her solution is irreversible. But it's a solution which has provoked much criticism amongst many addicts and those who treat them. Across Scotland, thousands of children whose own parents are addicts, dead, in prison or simply unable to cope are cared for by extended families called kinship carers. Barbara visits them looking for support.
I'm Barbara Harris. I'm Helen.
She's the oldest great-grand who's bringing up her great-grandchild.
How old are they?
He's 16 now. I've had him since he was 2.
So your mom?
Aye.
You're not grandma, your mom. I know of a woman that lived in New York, and she was 80 years old, and they gave her a newborn baby.
Oh my God.
She was 80 years old. She raised that baby until he was 18. She was 98 years old.
But this isn't an audience which is easily won over.
I wasn't too sure about the sterilisation part of it.
I don't think it's right bringing wee kids in that's got to be left to somebody else.
Even though opinion is mixed, Barbara persists in trying to convince them.
The reason I founded the organization was because it seemed like everybody was complaining about the fact that drug-addicted women were having baby after baby after baby, and nobody was doing anything to stop them from having baby after baby after baby.
the women do agree on one thing. It's the children who are suffering.
One of the kids in yours, 9 months, he was on withdrawal. The gran had to take him to get methadone every day.
I've adopted 8 children, and they were all drug exposed with the exception of one of them. And my children had a lot of medical problems. They had feeding tubes, oxygen, trach in their throat, hooked up to life support. My son actually passed away in '98. That's how I became acquainted with Barbara's organization, because I was so angry that his mother was allowed to do drugs and he died and nothing was done to her. And 6 months later, after he died, she gave birth to another child, and that child died also within 3 days.
Barbara's meeting with the kinship carers has reinforced her belief that Glasgow needs Project Prevention.
Touched my heart, because it seems like no matter what country you're in, the problems still exist, and I feel really bad for the grandparents who are taking on the burden of their children's children, and I feel bad that the government doesn't assist them with that, because just because you're related and share DNA doesn't mean that you shouldn't get help with these children. You know, these grandparents aren't the ones that brought them into the world.
The chairperson for North Glasgow Kinship Carers is 60-year-old Jessie. This is a time in her life she'd expected to be enjoying her grandchildren and taking things easy. But 6 years ago she became a kinship carer to her grandson.
My son and his partner had quite a serious addiction, long term. My wee grandson was born with the addiction. They tried to cope, I would say, for a couple of months, but you could see the parenting skills weren't there, and you start to notice a bit of neglect here and there.
Jessie's son is still an addict, yet she's concerned it's the rights of people like him which are taking priority.
Everybody's got human rights, we're no ignorant. But is these wee kids not got human rights? Has their human rights to be ignored? Have they to be brought up in that environment with a pot noodle, never getting substantial nutrition down them because the tenner bag comes first? Where's their human rights?
But does an addiction automatically prevent addicts from being good parents?
Everybody's rights need to be considered, and if a woman has a child that is ill or affected in some way by virtue of her problems, then that doesn't necessarily become child abuse. Medical problems for the child as a consequence, as a direct consequence of the maternal drug use, are actually quite small. They are much smaller than for many other conditions that where women merely have pregnancies. So you can't say that for a woman who's got problem drug use to become pregnant is child abuse. That does not follow. A woman who has a chaotic drug problem and is unable to look after her child is at risk of committing child abuse, but drug use and adequate parenting are not necessarily incompatible.
Jessie is now a full-time mother to her grandson, a role she never expected to play.
The sweat for that when he was born is embedded in me. I know everything, his sleep pattern, his first tooth, his first step, when he's happy, when he's feeling sad. I know everything about that child, and that's things a mother should know, no a granny. And your fear, I can fight for justice to these kids till the day I go out the world, but I'm telling you, it's nothing compared to the fear of God taking me and him not making it in this world.
Barbara Harris's visit has managed to prevent one more addict from having children. John, her first British client, has decided to go ahead, taking her £200 cash in exchange for a vasectomy.
nervous, but keen to get it over and done with. Obviously, you know, it's a delicate area, and it's frightening, you know, going under the knife, but it's something I'm desperate to get over and done with.
John will undergo the process on the NHS. After today, he won't be able to father any children. Scotland's growing drug problem costs the country £2.6 billion every year.
2 years ago, in the Scottish Parliament,
The government strategy now is not just prevention, but promoting recovery.
people have recovered from substance-based problems, so give yourselves a big round of applause.
From our perspective as a frontline drug service, we couldn't see Project Prevention taking off here. We just don't think that it fits with our culture, with our people. It's not person-centred, it doesn't, you know, it's not about the individual, it's about an idea, and it's not a very good idea for this country.
AdAction's recent survey shows 35% of service users stop using drugs and alcohol, while a further 40% have reduced their addiction.
This country, Scotland, believes in the idea of recovery. That's what our strategy is all about. The Road to Recovery, signed up to by everybody, by all partners and all politicians, is about the idea that people do and will get well. So what are we saying to those people through Project Prevention? You may get well, but you can't have children anymore because of a decision that you made when you were extremely vulnerable. That is unacceptable to us in Scotland.
Such criticism means little to Barbara Harris, who's off to pay her first British addict.
Did you have the paper from the doctor, or you mentioned a prescription?
Yep, I've got my prescription
so you could prove. We like to verify and make sure that the people we pay actually have,
of course,
a drug problem.
Thank you. I'm going to spend it on overdue rent and a bit of shopping.
How are you feeling?
I'm feeling okay. I'm feeling all recovered from the procedure. I'm fitting well.
No regrets?
No, certainly not. Certainly not.
I've been called everything, Hitler. I mean, I've been spit on. Typically, I just say one thing to my critics: if you truly believe that these women have a right to continue to have children, then step up, get in line, and adopt the next one born. I mean, to me, it's that simple.
Addiction and its devastating effects on children cannot be underestimated. But will Barbara Harris's controversial methods ever take root in Scotland?
It seems to me that it's addressing a very real problem, but in an impractical and incorrect way. We shouldn't be imposing control on them. We should help the women to control their own fertility so they can decide whether they want to have children, and if so, when is going to be the best time to do that.